Welcome to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. We've been discussing the life of Archduke Wilhelm of Austria, one of the more colourful members of the Habsburg family and a fervent Ukrainian nationalist. In this episode, we will discuss his involvement in battles taking place in the Ukrainian People's Republic, beginning with the autumn of 1918, when Szymon Petlura decided to take power in the Republic from the German marionette Pawlo Skoropadsky.
Archduke Wilhelm still involved in Ukrainian affairs, and on his command many Ukrainian troops under Austro-Hungarian control were stationed in the city of Lviv in October 1918. Because of this, the city of Lviv, or Lvov as the Poles knew it, was strongly dominated by a Polish majority population. However, the region around it had a majority Ukrainian population, the rural area around it. So they had claims to this region, and when finally the armistice came into power and Austria-Hungary collapsed, Germany collapsed, the Ukrainians declared the Western Ukrainian People's Republic on November 1st, 1918, and started fighting with the Poles in the city. They would probably not have had a chance at all if it wasn't for the fact that Archduke Wilhelm had reordered these troops to be stationed in the city a month before. So he took a decision that led to heavy fighting between the Poles and the Ukrainians. After a while, since the Poles were still the majority in the city, they managed to defend the city from the Ukrainians and push them out. It created, though, a full-scale war between Poland and the Western Ukrainian People's Republic, something which caused quite bad blood between Archduke Wilhelm and his family in Poland that were naturally on the Polish side. Finally, Petlura realized that he needed some help, and Archduke Wilhelm had excellent contacts in the European aristocracy, in European high politics. So he allowed Archduke Wilhelm to become a colonel of the Ukrainian People's Republic, of which Petlura was the commander. So he was put in charge for international relations of the headquarters of the main staff of the army of the Ukrainian People's Republic. And he was quite involved in them fighting against the Bolsheviks that were invading their lands. However, in the spring and summer of 1920, the situation had become dire for the Ukrainian People's Republic. The Bolsheviks had pushed them back practically all the way to the border of Poland. They only had a sliver of land left. And in that moment, Petlura realized that he needed help. Initially, he signed an armistice with the Poles. Later, in April 1920, a full-on alliance with the Poles in the so-called Treaty of Warsaw. They created a military-political agreement. They decided that the border between the two countries would be on the river Zbruch, so more or less where the border in the end was between the Soviet Union and the Second Polish Republic after the Treaty of Riga in 1921. But because of this, there would be a Ukrainian minority that would be left behind in the Polish state. Petlura realized he was ready for this compromise, but Archduke Wilhelm, being a more fervent Ukrainian nationalist, despite himself not being Ukrainian, he thought that this was high treason, and he resigned in protest from the Ukrainian People's Republic. Or rather than resign, he really just left and went into exile into Vienna, and initially he still was on their payroll. However, he was very critical of Petlura, and finally, in the end, the Ukrainians, they helped the Poles in the Battle of Warsaw. They pushed back the Bolshevik army, but in the end, the Poles were not strong enough to liberate the rest of Ukraine. They couldn't live up to their part of the deal of the Treaty of Warsaw. Also, the Ukrainians were not able to muster enough strength and created this general uprising in the wide Ukrainian population. So they couldn't also live up to their part of the end. of the deal. Therefore, with the Treaty of Riga being signed, the government of the Ukrainian People's Republic, initially they moved to Romania, but after a while they moved to Poland. Archduke Wilhelm in January 1921 penned an article in which he slammed the Poles. He claimed that they were responsible for pogroms in Lviv. He said that this was nothing that a civilized nation could do. More or less, he described the Poles as absolute brutes. And this article became quite famous in international politics in general. The Poles knew everything about it, and Archduke Wilhelm's father was outraged by this article, creating a rift between him and his son that would never disappear. His brother was also strongly critical of what Archduke Wilhelm had done. So it created this rift. And once the Ukrainian People's Republic, the government was created, the government in exile in Poland, they could naturally not have him on the payroll anymore, so they decided to fire him. He returned to Vienna, but being one of the Habsburgs and in this new Austria, there was no place for the Habsburg family, so he was still very much an outcast. He does believe that maybe he could muster some strength and do a renewed invasion of Ukraine and getting popular support. Petlura was terrified of this, that he was in Poland, and here you have a potential contender that could do a cross-border raid into Ukraine, and maybe the people would join him. So Petlura instead, he launched a couple of cross-border raids himself, reaching as far as to the city of Korostan, actually not that far from Kiev, before finally being defeated once and for all by the Soviet Red Army and being driven back to Poland. So this final offensive of Petlura was completely created by the fact that he feared the interference of Archduke Wilhelm. In the end, he started looking for help in other parts of Europe. The Archduke, since he had these family connections, he settled in Paris for a while. He was hoping to get help from his cousin Alonso, that was king of Spain. So he thought that maybe the Spanish would finance some kind of Ukrainian adventure, but nothing would come of it. Later on he would get involved with the Ukrainian nationalists from the Ukrainian Organization of Nationalists, the OUN, that later during the Second World War would create the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. They were quite strong in Paris, so he had a lot of contacts with them over there. And later on, because of this, he would get very much involved in the attempt to create a Ukrainian state that was allied to Nazi Germany during the Second World War. But this is far away from the Ukrainian People's Republic, so we might leave it off there and return to Archduke Wilhelm in some future episode.
Excellent. Yes, indeed. Well, thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
There we have it. A very interesting Habsburg character, Archduke Wilhelm France. Extraordinary story of an extraordinary time in the nation's history, but very much a nation, Ukraine, despite what President Putin of Russia would say now and what he said on the February the 24th when he sought to invade Ukraine to save it from, well, to save it from what? To save it from him, probably, which is rather strange. But there we are. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Poland Daily History. Thank you for watching.